Hello, people. Andrew here, talking about comics from a reader, collector, speculator, investor point of view, in that order of importance to myself. And today I am talking about IDW's book, Bigfoot. Okay, so the idea of a large, hairy creature that's not quite a man, but not quite a gorilla, has been in folklore for over 1,000 years. We know him sometimes as Sasquatch, or as in Himalayas, he's the Yeti or the abominable snowman. Always the creature lives in a remote location, very few sightings of it, but it's been in existence, as I said, for over 1,000 years. As the world gets smaller, or even became smaller as time goes on through the 1800s, through the 1900s, there are adventurers and explorers that went out there into the world trying to find some of these creatures of myth and mythology to either prove or disprove their existence. So they hunted them out in Africa and places. And one of the creatures that was being pursued was the Sasquatch, and people went out on excursions to try and track down and find out what they could about this creature. There was a man in the 1960s by the name of Roger Patterson, and he had an active interest in the Bigfoot legend. So he amassed a bunch of other enthusiasts that were also interested in finding out, the truth of the Bigfoot legend, and he got some financial backing behind it to go into the woods of Northern California and try and track down this creature. They went to an area where there had been reported sightings and what have you. So they're looking out there in like 65 or something like that, and they're not finding anything. And as the months go by and then the years go by, all of these people that were so enthusiastic at the beginning, they're no longer enthusiastic, and they don't follow along with Roger Patterson. And his financial backing also loses interest, and so he's sort of left out on his own. But he's not deterred, and in fact, he decides that he wants to make a documentary about Bigfoot, or at least his pursuit of the creature. To try and pick up some of the myths and whatever. So he gets a friend of his, a Robert Gimlin, who's a skeptic and doesn't really believe in the whole Bigfoot thing. They go out into an area in Northern California, and they're out there with the intention of filming this documentary on Bigfoot, when lo and behold, there comes a Bigfoot striding through the forest. Roger manages to get off his horse and start filming the creature, and we get just under a minute footage of this creature striding through the forest. And this was in 1967. This image here, recreated by Richard Corben, is from frame number 352, and it is perhaps the most iconic image of a Bigfoot ever recorded. The footage itself has been examined and studied time and time again, with people neither being able to completely prove that it's authentic and people not being able to completely disprove that it's authentic, like it's saying it's a hoax. So the sides are still divided. If you want to believe, then there's room for you to believe. If you don't want to believe, there's room for you not to believe. But it became one of the most examined pieces of footage regarding Bigfoot and regarding all of this, the study of mythical and weird animals and creatures. So this was in 1967 that it made the Patterson-Gimlin footage of Bigfoot. 1972, there was a film released to the public called The Legend of Boggy Creek, and it was about a Sasquatch, Bigfoot type of creature that was terrorized the town of Fouke, Arkansas. I say documentary, but there was some embellishments there as well. Anyway, so the film's out in 1972, and when I was a kid, my father used to take us up to cottages in the northern parts of Ontario. I call it northern then, but it's really just the outskirts of the north. We're talking Huntsville, Muskokas, Haliburton. I'm not sure where we went for the cottage, but I know there was always a small town nearby, and that small town always had a movie theater. And one night of the week, we would always go out to myself, my sister, and my father, go out to the movie theater, and whatever was playing, that's what we would go and see. It's where the first time I saw Soylent Green, or Crazy Mary, Dirty Larry, or is it Dirty Larry, Crazy Mary? I can't remember which either. But I see these films that had been second-rate films to to begin with, and it had passed their prime date in Toronto and moved their way out into the outskirts. So one of these times out in the cottage country, we saw the film The Legend of Boggy Creek, which again is about sort of a Bigfoot creature. And I did not sleep well that night because all the people in Folk, Arkansas, they're living in these wooden buildings, isolated wooden buildings surrounded by dark forest. And where do we go after the film finishes? We go to this wooden cabin, isolated wooden cabin surrounded by dark forests. So yeah, so I didn't sleep well that night, fearing the Bigfoot would attack that cabin. But in the morning, everything's safe and sound. But my curiosity is piqued, and I'm somewhat fascinated by the Bigfoot and study and look at some of the footage and read up on some monsters. It adds to that element of myself where I pursue these sort of things out of an interest, a hobby, a casual interest. Anyways, we got up to year 2005, and IDW, which I had to look up because it stands for Idea and Design Works, which established itself in 1999. Anyways, they do this short run. It's only 4 issues long, called Bigfoot, and they get Steve Niles and Rod Zombie to write it. But Richard Corben does both the artwork for the covers and for the interior, and this is really in his wheelhouse. So what is it about? It's a very simple story. There's a kid, again, it was probably about my age when I saw Legend of Boggy Creek, and his parents, they go to a cabin out in one of these parks somewhere, and it's attacked by a Bigfoot, and it's the last time the kid ever sees his parents. Bigfoot, kills and drags them off into the woods type of thing, and it scars him for a great deal of his life. And when he's an older, young adult, probably in his early 20s or whatever, he decides he reads an article that references the same campsite and something bad has happened there, and he said, I had enough of this. I mean, it's been plaguing my nightmares for years. I am going to go settle the debt, and I'm going to track down this Bigfoot. So he heads back to the park, runs into the same sheriff that was there when his parents were slain. And it turns out the sheriff he knows about this creature, but has been hesitant to tell anybody about it because in fear that they'll brand him a lunatic because he has no definitive proof. Anyways, the two of them team up together and decide to go out and hunt down Bigfoot. It's a very simple story. And it would work well for a plot for a film because it would all be on the visuals. There would be the darkness of the shadows of the forest, the mystery, it's the things that you didn't see, glimpses of the creature in some of the attacks. There would be a certain amount of gore, and the soundtrack would swell up as well. So I could see it being like a 90-minute short horror film, and it would work well as that. As a comic book, it works because of the art. As I said, this is in Richard Corben's wheelhouse, and Richard Corben is one of my top 10 comic book artists, period. I really enjoy everything that he does, and as I said, he's particularly good at the horrific elements and the supernatural, playing with light and shadow. And he's good in this particular series at depicting the creature. Sometimes it is you see the full creature, but a lot of the times it's in silhouette, or it's only part of it illuminated by the moonlight. So the gore is sort of toned down. It's there, but it's toned down. It really plays off like a really good, chilling horror story. It works because of Richard Corben's artwork. As I said, the story is almost inconsequential. It's not, like nothing that you haven't heard before, but it's because of the artwork that this, I highly recommend it for the artwork. If you're a Richard Corben fan, you really need to pick up this series. This is issue number 1, and there were 4 issues in the series. As I said, the story is simple itself, but it's all in Corben's artwork, not just of the creatures and the effects of it, but the scenery. the deep forests, the shadows, the moonlights, the caves, even the people and the incidents that happen around them. It's a good part of what makes this work is what's not shown. Uh, there's a scene where there's a discovered a bear, like a 900-pound bear, has been after some deductions. The bear didn't fall from somewhere; it was actually thrown. But you don't see the bear being thrown. You all you see is the repercussions, and as they examine and take a look around to see where it could possibly have come from, to realize that this thing had been tossed, and what on earth was powerful enough to toss, like a 900-pound bear. So it builds on that terror, builds on that chill. And again, a great deal of this is through the artwork itself. I think the artwork is spectacular in this book. So I would recommend it because of the artwork. So that was issue 3, and then finally we have issue 4 when it comes to an end. Is there a surprise ending? Not really. I mean, it's you can see what's happening here already by the time you get to the end of it, and it's really just, as I said, more so about the artwork and the simplicity of the story itself, and it's great because of that. So it's I highly recommend it. Collectible, if you're a Richard Corben fan, then yes, this is all Richard Corben. I mean, you got Steve Niles and Rod Zombie doing the writing, and some people follow those two particular creatives, but really this is a Richard Corben show, and it's great because of that. As far as speculation and investment, this book itself, each one of them sells for about $20 to $30 in a store somewhere, in a local comic shop, in the back shubins, if you can find it, because it didn't have a huge print run. IDW about 6 years into their development, and so there's not a huge print run for this. I found a copy of issue number 4 this year in a dollar bin. So I bought it just because, I think the artwork's great. Eventually, if I could get another set together, I'd do that and give it to somebody else. But so it's possible to find books like this in the dollar bin. I wouldn't count on it, but then some people, when they get a huge stack of stuff from a local comic book store and they have all of these titles, they know which ones are the keys and which ones are selling, so they can pick out the keys in a collection. And then there's all this other stuff, and sometimes they have the time to go through book by book, and other times it's just like, we got so much of it, just throw it into the dollar bin. And this could have been one of those books that was somewhat overlooked, because it was the one and only time I've seen a Bigfoot book in a dollar bin, but there might be more out there. Selling it online and in other stores and stuff, I've seen the price, as I say, about $20 to $30. I wouldn't spec on the book. This is a book that you would buy for a Richard Corben collector, and I think there are enough of those that it's a worthy investment in that respect if you can get it. But mainly it's if you really enjoy this kind of artwork, if you enjoy this kind of short little horror story, this is, again, right in your wheelhouse too. So I do recommend it for that reason. I wouldn't slab any of this stuff or get it graded 9.8. I mean, the copy, even the one I found in the dollar bin, was in pretty sharp condition. So they're all going to be in pretty good condition, for a book from 2005. It's got heavier paper and cardstock cover, so that it wears better. It doesn't disintegrate like the newsprint of the 60s and 70s type of thing. So it's got better quality paper. It keeps its form pretty good. And the main reason people want this is because you want to look at the artwork on the inside and read the whole story and see everything about it. So that's Bigfoot, and that's what I got to say about that. And as always, be good to yourself, be good to others. Go check out Legend of Boggy Creek, and we'll talk again soon.